Assalamu alaikum. I hope you are doing well. Are you one of the countless people who keep complaining these days about their memory? You can't remember names. You can't remember what you studied. You can't remember what you told whom. When you did what? Or what you were supposed to do. Or do you have complaints about your attention? You can't stay focused anymore. Earlier, you could finish an entire book or watch a full lecture. But now, after reading half a page or watching 30 seconds to 1 minute of a lecture, you feel like looking at or doing something else. And an even more important question, are you also like everyone else now, feeling that nothing feels good anymore? The small satisfactions and little joys you used to feel in life. Do you no longer feel them? No matter how good the food is, no matter how expensive the restaurant is, when you come back, that same feeling of emptiness and dissatisfaction surrounds you again. If that is the case, then you too are a victim of an invisible war, a war in which we are struggling to save our most valuable resource from some of the most talented and intelligent people on Earth. What kind of war is this? Who are we fighting against? What is that resource we are trying and failing to protect? And what is the connection between poor memory, lack of attention, and not enjoying anything anymore? Most importantly, is there really any solution to all this? And if there is, where do we find the formula for that solution? That is what today's discussion is about. But before we get into that, I have a few strange questions for you. My first question is, have you ever noticed that the logos of Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Skype, Telegram, Discord, Vimeo, and many other famous global companies are all just different variations of blue? If you were given a big company, one that you knew or hoped would be recognized worldwide, wouldn't you choose a color for your branding that was highly distinctive, so that people could identify your company the moment they saw that color? Then why are so many giant companies choosing just one color family for their logos and brand identity? And here's a complimentary question. Whether you enter Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, you'll notice that notifications are always red. Why? Why does every platform have to be designed in a way where the background is white and notifications keep appearing in red? Let me tell you about an interesting experiment. By doing just one thing, Google increased its yearly revenue by more than $200 million. Do you know what they did? They were trying to decide which shade of blue to use for the ads they showed. The experiment was jokingly called the 41 Shades of Blue experiment. In other words, they A/B tested nearly 41 different shades and variants of blue to see which one people clicked on the most. And after choosing the winning shade, their yearly revenue went up by more than $200 million. Do you know why everyone chooses blue as a brand color? Do you know why notifications are always shown in red? None of these colors were chosen randomly. Rather, neuroscientists, psychologists, and some of the best behavioral scientists in the world tested people, like you and me, human, guinea pigs, for years, trying to determine which colors create the most arousal, excitement, and urge to click. If you pay attention, you'll notice that once that little red notification appears, it becomes very difficult to keep scrolling past it or continue doing something else. Since scrolling has come up, let me ask another question. Think about it. LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, each one is different, right? Yet not just these, but almost every company is now trying to turn its landing page or main page into a newsfeed model. That means you can keep scrolling continuously and infinitely, and neither you nor I know what the next post will be about. And you may be surprised to know that one of the most exciting, hooking, and addictive designs in the world is this very newsfeed. When Facebook first introduced it, everyone immediately understood how powerful it was. Let me give you an example so that the power of this becomes easier to understand, and so we can also explain the psychology behind it. There was a time when, even in Germany, Everyone listened to songs, talks, and other things on MP3 players or CDs. But when FM radio arrived, even people who had MP3 players full of thousands of songs started listening to FM radio instead. Do you know why? Because with FM radio, nobody knows what song the RJ will play next, and that not knowing creates excitement in us. This is called the novelty bias or novelty effect. We are naturally curious about anything new, and in the case of the newsfeed, notice that new things keep appearing continuously. And through that, a system has been created to keep us hooked. Why am I giving these examples? What do they have to do with our memory crisis and attention crisis? And what do they have to do with our sense of well-being? To answer that, we need to hear from Sean Parker, Facebook's founding president. Parker said that the one and only goal of Facebook and similar platforms is to capture and hold your conscious attention and time. Their success depends entirely on how long they can hold your conscious attention. But why? Look, for years, the world fought wars over many resources: oil, land, gold. But in today's world, the most valuable resource is attention, your attention and mine. Do you know why? Because if you can control people's attention, not one or two people, but say 10 million people, then you can control what those 10 million people do: eat, read, and buy. And if you can control all of that, then business, commerce, influence, and power all come into your hands. And that is exactly why, if you observe carefully, the richest and most powerful people in the world today are the ones who can control attention. Because by taking hold of our most valuable resource, attention, they are creating more and more wealth. And do you know where they are investing that wealth? In research. They are hiring and recruiting the most talented neuroscientists, psychologists, designers, and related experts in the world, paying them to guide the creation of the most addictive designs possible. As a result, day by day, these platforms are becoming more and more addictive. But where exactly does that hurt us? How is it connected to our memory, our attention, and our happiness? There was a time when writing was the primary mode of communication. Then came the printing press, and mass communication began. Through books and newspapers, a writer could deliver a message to huge numbers of people. During that era, we developed what might be called a typographic mind. When I read a book line by line, from one side to the other, with focused attention, my attention gets stronger. At the same time as I try to follow how the writer is thinking and writing, my thought process aligns with the writer's thought process, and my own thinking gets upgraded. When we had this typographic mind, studying continuously improved us, our brain, our mind, our attention. And this also had a deep relationship with our sense of well-being, which we'll discuss shortly. But the moment television arrived as a mass medium, experts like Neil Postman began writing books, like amusing ourselves to death. In other words, when we used to amuse ourselves through reading, it improved us. But from the moment we entered entertainment and amusement through a completely different format, even back in the 1980s, people like Postman felt that through this process, we were slowly advancing toward a kind of death. And after crossing that stage, we have now entered a phase where we are turning into zombies. Our souls are being sucked out. We are becoming the living dead, wandering around our rooms like zombies. And zombies don't have feeling, attention, or memory. Our working memory and reasoning, our overall cognitive capacity, drop. Whether we are actively using the phone or scrolling or not, even if the phone is merely present in front of us, within our field of vision, our attention declines. Why? Because our minds have become so attached to it that we continue to keep part of our attention on the phone. Experiments show that even if the phone is just lying on the table, our attention drops. We often think, what's the problem if I just don't open the notification? But look at this study. Notifications fracture our attention. Even if we ignore them, that itself is a decision, and making that decision also consumes attention. That creates what is called attention residue. And because of that residue, I can no longer do the work I was doing with full concentration. And what do we actually do now? We don't really ignore them. We constantly switch tasks. We think replying to one message won't really harm the conversation or our study. But we are not aware of the cost of this task switching. Look at this interesting study. In 2004, our average attention span was around 2.5 minutes, but now it has dropped to around 50 seconds. This is from a 2023 study. At the very beginning, I was talking about attention, right? Now everyone feels like they have become an ADHD patient. Nobody can focus anymore. Look at this study. Over 24 months, more than 2,500 boys and girls were studied, and it was found that when they used digital media at high frequency, even those who did not already have ADHD gradually began to show ADHD-like symptoms. That means even if we did not originally have the disorder, we are developing its symptoms through our media consumption. And so, all of us now feel like we no longer have the attention we once had. In fact, every platform has created a kind of chaos, and chaos pulls our attention. Right now, as you are watching this video, if you are not in full screen mode, you'll notice that many thumbnails and many other things around the edges are pulling your attention continuously. The moment this video contains even a slightly boring part, you will switch to something else on YouTube or Facebook. But that is not the platform's goal, that you complete this video. Their goal is simply to keep you on the platform as long as possible. And now every video maker, every content creator, every filmmaker is trying to make things as attention-grabbing as possible, to give as many dopamine hits as possible. And all of this together is completely damaging our brains. By the way, if you still haven't switched to full screen mode, do it now. Do you know why it matters? Because in this war, the war in which our attention, our most valuable resource, is being taken from us, and we are being turned into zombies. Two people have helped me the most in learning how to fight back, and I want to introduce you to them. The first person is Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, a psychologist who spent his life pursuing one question: what makes people happy? In searching for the answer, he interviewed thousands of people over many years. Along with hundreds of researchers and psychologists, he conducted one study after another. He beautifully wrote his findings in a book called Flow. I definitely recommend that you read it. But let me share a few simple ideas from the book. We often think that money or wealth has a huge relationship with happiness. But in Flow, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi cites research by Ed Diener from the University of Illinois, where the wealthiest people in America reported an average happiness level of 77%, while middle-class people reported 62%. That's only a 15% difference. And this is significant because the wealthiest here refers to the top 400 richest people. That's one point. Another important study he mentions is by Norman Bradburn. There it is said that the difference in happiness between the highest income group and the lowest income group is only about 25%. So yes, wealth definitely plays an important role, but it is not nearly as important as we often imagine. So if wealth is not the main factor, then what are the other sources of happiness? Another important source people assume is pleasure, sleep, romance, food, and all these things. We now try more and more to find happiness in pleasure, especially as it becomes easier to turn us into zombies. But if you read Flow, you will see that pleasure does not really give us happiness either. Then what does? Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's research on more than 15,000 individuals, containing hundreds of thousands of data points, conducted across more than 10 countries and more than 30 domains or professions, kept producing the same result again and again. When people are in a flow state, they are happy. And the more time a person spends in a flow state, the happier they are. The flow state has 8 characteristics, and all of them revolve around work and attention. The more someone can do meaningful work in a focused way, the happier they can be. I will discuss the 8 characteristics in detail another time, inshallah. If I begin discussing them in this video, it will become too long. Instead, let me introduce you to another person and another kind of work. 1. Through which happiness and success can both be brought back into life. There was a time when everyone, from a blacksmith or potter to brickbreakers, all the way to top-level intellectuals doing the deepest forms of mental work regularly, entered flow states in their work. But today, even those doing the most intellectually demanding work cannot enter flow states anymore, simply because the 8 characteristics necessary for flow are now being obstructed by our social media use and our constant internet connection. So it is becoming very clear why nothing feels good anymore, because the greatest source of happiness, doing meaningful work in a focused way, that deep work, we can no longer do it. So now we have one reason why we cannot stay well anymore, but attention also has a deep relationship with success. And that brings me to the second person who gives us proper guidance in this war. Cal Newport, a professor of computer science at Georgetown University and an MIT PhD. He spent a long time working on the performance of students and others, and he wrote an extraordinary book called Deep Work. The book shares some amazing ideas that are very applicable even in this age of AI, when everyone is worried about who will survive, whose job will remain, and whose will disappear. There was a very interesting presentation given at the White House when Obama was president. It was delivered by Eric Brynjolfsson, an economist and professor at the MIT Sloan School of Management. The presentation was about how we can get ahead in the race against machines. In that talk, he mentioned 3 categories of people who will remain the most successful. In the age of machines and AI, highly skilled workers, superstars, and owners, those who own businesses. To enter the first 2 categories, 2 qualities are extremely important. The first quality is the capacity to quickly master complex knowledge or complex subject matter. The second is becoming an elite performer, someone who can produce elite amounts of output at elite quality. And according to Cal Newport's hypothesis, we can do this only if we regularly and consistently engage in deep work. Deep work has some common characteristics. During the time frame or session in which we work, it is very important to be free of distraction, to remain continuously focused, and to follow proper protocols and systems, if we want to properly design a deep work session. Because the entire idea of deep work revolves around a single equation: high-quality work, time spent, intensity of focus. In other words, the greater a person's intensity of focus, the more time they spend, the higher quality work they can produce. They can generate high-quality output and master complex things. As a result, they can enter those successful categories: superstars or highly skilled workers who can survive in this race against machines and AI. So I definitely recommend reading the discussions and books related to this topic, internalizing the ideas, and applying them. Because once we have fallen into this fight, there is no escape route waiting for us. We have to develop our own strategies. We have to solve this challenge ourselves. Of course, I also know that developing a practical protocol for yourself is difficult and time-consuming. Instead of learning all the theories and information, many people simply want to know what they should do on a daily basis and how to design that. That is why I was trying to design a protocol, a high-performance study session that would help us do deep work and move toward a flow state. But while trying to summarize it, I realized that it actually needs to be divided into at least 3 parts. The first is the preparation phase. In this phase, we prepare in order to design a perfect study or working session. This preparation has many components: setting intention, setting outcomes, setting a clear finish line, setting the gains we want. At the same time, we need to properly block the time and block the location as well. Then we need to organize the resources we need and properly design the environment. This is where we need a detailed discussion about how to handle the phone and other distractions. Lighting matters. The desk needs to be clean. Sound, temperature, everything is important. Along with that, another very important part is having a plan for how I will preserve my energy and stay energized throughout the session. So once this preparation phase is over and I enter the session, the performance phase begins. In that phase, we need some activation rituals. It could be the stop technique. It could be breathing. It could be dua. It could be gratitude. It could be visualization, imagining that I have completed the task. There are many such techniques that can help bring the brain into a focused state. These need to be discussed in detail. The more techniques someone knows, the more they can apply whichever suits them, or design a protocol in their own way. And after the activation, when the session is actually going on, we can set a structure for it. For example, in deep work, 4 types of session structures are discussed. So the details of those structures are needed as well. At the same time, when will I take a break? How will I stay energized? What will I do during the break? And most importantly, what will I not do during the break? All of this needs a proper structure too. And all of this together forms the discussion of the second phase, the performance phase, and it does not end there. When we study or work, we often do no preparation at all. We somehow sit down, do a bit of work, and then leave. There is no proper closing. But for a proper closing, there should be another phase called preservation. In that phase, how will I review? How will I plan the next session? How will I properly organize the outcomes I have achieved? There are ideas and strategies for all of that, and they need to be implemented. So to design a perfect high-performance study or work session, one that takes us toward a flow state and helps us do deep work, there is actually a lot to discuss. That is why I thought I would turn this whole discussion into a lecture series. I will cover all the ideas one by one, dividing them into 3 modules. Altogether, it will become like a small micro course, which might take 2 or 3 hours to complete, inshallah. But ideas alone are not enough. Implementation is necessary too. So alongside the ideas, there will also be activation strategies and action steps, such as designing a study session and sharing it with me. I have tried to gather all the ideas from these 3 phases into one place. I will put the details in the comment box or description box, inshallah. Actually, all of us need to become much more aware of these issues. We need to become aware of this war. The people who are waging this war against us are very aware of what they are doing. Steve Jobs did not give iPads to his children. Mark Zuckerberg and Priscilla Chan are raising their children in a very low-tech environment. We should take this war very seriously. For our own happiness, for our success, we should make our family members, children, and everyone else aware of it. And we should properly design and protect our environment so that even in the midst of these attacks, we can save ourselves a little. I will put the links to the books I mentioned, Flow, Deep Work, and others, the papers and studies I referred to, and the full accumulation of everything needed to design a high-performance study session across the 3 phases in the comment box and description box, inshallah. Please do check them. We will meet again, inshallah, with another important concept needed to achieve meaning, success, and happiness in life. Until then, stay well. Assalamu alaikum.